talking to people in Washington, D.C., especially people from the think tank community, you can kind of feel that the prevalent view about China is that there is a kind of nationalistic wave on the rising in China, and that this can leads to a more confrontational stance of China in international affairs in general, and especially with regards to the U.S. What is your opinion about this prevalent view in the U.S., especially the D.C. community?
Well, I think this view of China inevitably will come into clash with the United States in the future has a very deep historic roots, in fact. It's based on essentially two thinkings, which is very popular in Anglo-American world. That is, one thinking is it's the emphasis on the rise and the fall of the great powers. There is always, in the Anglo-American world, starting with traditional Edward Gibbon study of the Roman Empire, followed by Arnold Toynbee. We know also Paul Kennedy, and today there are even more scholars studying Thucydides' trap, as they say. The idea of the great power in decline is always challenged by the second coming. The second coming power, which in this case will be China, will inevitably try to take over the position or try to undermine the position of the incumbent number one and destroy it and take over. So this has been the American reading of history that has been there for many, many, many years. Not so much popular assumption in continental Europe, I must point out. So this is you can argue it's a way of looking at things. It's very difficult for American policymakers, politicians, think tank people to overcome that argument. So this is one roots of that way of thinking. The second, of course, is the question of democracy, the question of ideology. They don't believe that a country that does not have a democratic or Western system will necessarily adopt a peaceful foreign policy. So this is an argument very much influenced by German philosopher Kant, so-called the democrat peace, and there is very deeply rooted in the American political system. So if you put these two things together, China is bound to be the next troublemaker for the international system.
And you don't believe there is some kind of inevitability of this two big powers coming to a clash. You may, I have the feeling that you envisage a scenario in which there can be a co-evolution of two big powers in the yes. international system.
Well, this is a minority view, also within the U.S. government and also among some important thinkers of foreign, but it's not prevailing view. Henry Kissinger, for example, who very much take that view for granted. Co-evolution, of course, as a concept you just mentioned, it's actually invented by Kissinger Associates, the managing director, Joshua Ramo. And then Robert Zoellick, for example, also, who proposed this concept of embracing China, but ask China to become what he called responsible stakeholder. So yes, there are several viewpoints that were proposed within the past administration, and among the think tank circles. But this is not prevailing view. Prevailing view is conflicts inevitable.
And what is the prevailing view among Chinese political elite?
Well, Chinese are very much concerned about this American perspective. It's not so much the American criticism of China, which they got used to it anyway. The People's Republic was in existence, after 1949. The question of political legitimacy, meaning communist system can never be considered legitimate, that kind of criticism has been very common, and they got used to it. But now I think they're really worried is American go down the route of believing in inevitable clash along that great power rise and fall logic of the great power conflict. They are looking at American, especially the last few years under Obama administration, seem to be, no matter what Obama administration say to the Chinese, saying what are we doing in Asia Pacific? It's a rebalancing, or whatever language they use. They use a pivot first. They drop that concept. They're now using rebalancing. They say it's good for Asian Pacific. It's not containment of China. It's not a Cold War mentality. No matter what they say, Chinese leadership found hard to believe, because every steps taken by Obama administration so far looks more and more like a Cold War strategy of containment, especially because I think it's a mistake on the Obama administration side is the overemphasis on military agenda during this peacetime, because every step Obama took has a very significant military implications, and the administration actually preferred to advertise that military elements. I think it's totally unnecessary. For example, the rotation of only 2,000 Marines in Darwin, Australia. If you don't emphasize this, advertise it as being part of the grand plan, Chinese would not be so alarmed.
If the emphasis was put on the, let's say, on the trade component, on the investment component.
Investment component, climate change, collaboration with each other on nuclear non-proliferation. You see, these are the issues the two powers should work together or should pay more attention to, rather than looking at military balance. Now, here I want to emphasize again, overemphasize on military balance again is part of that tradition of rise and fall logic, because that is focusing on horizontal distribution of physical power. So
let's hope the two big powers do not get trapped in this kind of logic. It would be good for us all, for the world.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Lanxin.
Thank you.